During her very first appearance on the senior national squad for Team USA, Caitlyn Clark utterly shattered 5 FIBA world records in just one single matchup. Yet, barely 24 hours after that legendary performance, the very people sharing her bench, her coach, and fellow players seemingly conspired to permanently clip her wings. I am not just spinning rumors here. Team USA's head commander, Lawson, practically confessed to this sabotage during the media debrief following a remarkably messy victory over Puerto Rico. The entire hoops community is completely spiraling into a frenzy right now. Therefore, we need to dive deep into her exact words, examine the highly questionable actions Angel Reese took across 4 distinct trips down the court, and unpack why this targeted campaign against Caitlyn is undeniably real. The video evidence leaves zero room for doubt. Drop your thoughts in the comments section. What possible motive did Coach Lawson have to leash such a generational talent? Listen, Puerto Rico came out swinging. They brought relentless intensity from the jump. Their pure effort really tested our limits, and those scrappy hustle moments gave them so many scoring opportunities. Honestly, we just looked completely out of rhythm tonight, struggling heavily on both offense and defense. We discussed the situation in the locker room. There were definitely flashes of brilliance, but we also hit some massive speed bumps out there. And truthfully, that is a positive thing. Facing adversity builds character. It forces you to problem solve in real time, and we are absolutely still in the process of putting those puzzle pieces together. Wait a minute. What on earth went wrong? Where did that lightning-fast fast break magic from the previous day disappear to? What happened to that beautiful, unselfish ball movement? Completely vanished into thin air this time around. Imagine walking into a brand new workplace, and before your lunch break even hits, you have shattered every single performance metric in corporate history. That perfectly describes the masterclass Caitlyn unleashed when she suited up against Senegal for her maiden voyage with the senior national squad. Stepping onto the hardwood as a reserve, she clocked a mere 19 minutes of action, dropping a cool 17 points and orchestrating 12 flawless assists without handing the ball to the enemy a single time. She rained down 4 triples out of 5 attempts, went a perfect 5 for 5 at the charity stripe, and orchestrated this entire symphony as a backup in less than 20 minutes. Calling that a mere introduction is an insult. That was a hostile takeover. We are not just talking about a solid stat line here. This was a performance entirely without historical parallel. The statisticians over at FIBA literally had to dust off decades of global archives just to comprehend the magnitude of the hurricane she had just unleashed. What those record books revealed was mind-blowing. A single rookie had demolished 5 distinct global benchmarks simultaneously during her inaugural appearance. Swapping out 5 athletes simultaneously, going with the full hockey line changes. Full line swaps happening, Kelsey Plum sinking her opening bucket. Here comes Caitlyn Clark pushing the tempo, whipping it toward Billings. Billings takes it down the left flank, kisses it off the window. Just look at the absolute lethal potential of this American roster. Let us break down milestone number 1. The absolute highest assist total ever recorded by anyone wearing a Team USA jersey on day 1. I am talking across both the men's and women's divisions. Since the dawn of American international hoops, 0 human beings have ever stepped onto the court and distributed the rock with such godlike vision on their first try. Not a single soul. Yet she pulled it off in under 20 minutes. Moving on to milestone number 2. The supreme assist champion for an international debut across the entire globe. She did not just rewrite the American history books. She completely obliterated the worldwide standard. We are talking about every single nation, every legend to ever lace them up, and every rookie outing in the annals of FIBA. She conquered the entire planet on her maiden voyage. This is absolute elite-tier basketball. Ryan Howard kicking it back out to Clark. Clark threads the needle inside, finishes beautifully off the backboard. What spectacular ball rotation. That brings us to milestone number 3. Claiming the runner-up spot for the most dimes ever dropped in the history of FIBA qualification tournaments. Period. A single matchup into her international career, and her name is permanently etched alongside the most legendary passing clinics this competition has ever witnessed. Just one night. Now for milestone number 4. The absolute peak assist count generated by a non-starter in the entirety of FIBA's existence. Again, across both genders. She did not even hear her name called during the starting lineups. She entered as a secondary unit player and managed to accomplish a feat that no international reserve had ever dreamed of achieving. And Caitlyn gets her hands on the rock yet again. Sitting on 8 points right now, looks like she might fire from beyond the arc, but instead, she dishes it off to Rhyne Howard. Howard launches the deep ball and nails her second triple of the evening. Hand it to her, curling tightly around that screen, swinging the rock directly into Clark's hands. Caitlyn, with a filthy behind-the-back crossover, locates Rhyne Howard spotting up. Howard fires from downtown. We called this earlier, folks. The on-court telepathy between Clark and Howard is nothing short of pure poetry in motion. Finally, milestone number 5. Dishing out 8 beautiful dimes before the halftime buzzer without a single solitary giveaway. That is officially the greatest first-half playmaking performance the qualifying stages have ever seen. She orchestrated all that magic before heading to the locker room, and she protected the rock with absolute perfection. But brace yourself, because the reality behind those statistics is even more insane. Rhyne Howard absolutely torched the scoreboard that evening, and a massive percentage of her buckets were the direct result of Caitlyn's elite court vision and pinpoint deliveries. In a microscopic window of 19 minutes, she elevated everyone, sharing the floor with her to superstar status. Transitioning to the global stage did not faze her for a single second. She stepped onto the hardwood and forced the entire game to bow to her rhythm. Searching for an open teammate now, curling hard off that pick, threads a gorgeous dime right to Copper. Copper hits them with the up and under move. What an absolutely lethal finish, and my goodness, what a masterful setup from floor general Caitlyn Clark. Logically, you would assume the very next match would be focused on amplifying that exact momentum, correct? Increasing her floor time, handing her the keys to the offense, letting her cook. You just witnessed your prodigy shatter 5 global benchmarks. You ride that hot hand until the wheels fall off. However, a completely bizarre sequence of events unfolded when the American squad laced up to battle Puerto Rico. And let me tell you, the game tape is borderline sickening to witness. Imagine a scenario that is practically unheard of during a FIBA World Cup qualifying match. Picture the rival team's manager's own child proudly holding up a poster idolizing athletes from the enemy squad, specifically a massive banner dedicated to Caitlyn Clark and Paige Buchers. Yes, the offspring of the Puerto Rican commanding coach was literally perched in the bleachers, cheering wildly for the very prodigy her mother was desperately attempting to shut down. Take a second to truly absorb the sheer magnitude of that situation. Alongside heavy hitters like Angel Reese, Rhyne Howard, yesterday's absolute standout athlete of the match, Kalea Copper, and naturally, another undeniable crowd darling, Caitlyn Clark stepping onto the hardwood. The stands were an ocean of Clark uniforms and handmade posters held by awestruck little girls and boys everywhere you looked. The sheer magnitude of the Fever fandom radiating through this arena is absolute madness. Oh, absolutely. Is greater than is greater than. Did you catch that? Is greater than is greater than? This wasn't merely a single household going crazy for Clark. That stadium was stuffed to the rafters. We are not talking about a respectable turnout. We are talking shoulder to shoulder, cues wrapping around the block, electric atmosphere, championship-level intensity. Thousands bought tickets for one singular reason. Caitlyn Clark was in the house. The official FIBA television network even assigned a solitary camera operator to stalk her every move relentlessly, capturing not merely her active possessions, but her moments of rest, the huddles, and even her pre-game shooting routine. The executives at FIBA made a deliberate broadcasting choice, declaring her the ultimate protagonist of this entire event, and they proved it with their lens angles long before a single announcer uttered her name. Just like we witnessed in the opening bout, those aggressive lineup changes are likely going to repeat themselves as the coaching staff desperately tries to navigate between 5 distinct defensive assignments, 5 athletes fighting on the floor. Is greater than is greater than. Furthermore, that electrifying hype refused to remain confined within those stadium walls. The phenomenon known as Caitlyn Clark mania was infecting foreign press syndicates that historically ignore women's hoops entirely. Suddenly, they were publishing massive features on this qualifying round simply because she was participating. Reporters from nations utterly lacking a WNBA franchise were breathlessly filing updates about this showdown. That kind of organic reach is unprecedented. It is a level of stardom you simply cannot artificially create. Yet, the story goes even deeper. Her presence was not merely a magnet for her own personal glory. She was violently dragging global eyeballs toward the entirety of women's basketball. The Indiana Fever's identity was crossing oceans solely on the back of a single human being. Populations who had never witnessed a single minute of a WNBA broadcast were suddenly captivated by the game, simply because Clark was shooting hoops in their local time zone. Are you listening? Phase number 5. Goodness gracious. It is unbelievable. Is greater than FIBA is basically presenting her as a circus headliner. The Coliseum is completely sold out and vibrating with anticipation. The enemy commander's own flesh and blood is hoisting her moniker into the sky on a piece of cardboard. Spectators inside that building recounted a completely shifted atmosphere. The literal millisecond Clark's fingertips grazed the leather. If her sneakers were on the court, the audience was on the edge of their seats. The moment she returned to the bench, a collective exhale washed over the bleachers. A gravitational pull of that magnitude is genuinely terrifying and exceptionally scarce. Brianna Jones is greater than Caitlyn Clark, ruthlessly jumps into the passing lane, sprinting the entire length of the court for a spectacular solo breakaway. She effortlessly banks it in off the backboard. She literally turned to her squad to confirm if the shot fell. Now she steps to the charity stripe, fully demanding the flagrant call. It certainly looks like she took a brutal strike to the skull. So let us review the replay. Caitlyn Clark snatches the errant pass and blazes from end to end. Here we go. The official's positioning obscured the crucial angle. She absolutely absorbed a shot to the cranium. She is passionately arguing her perspective, but she will only be awarded standard free throws. Is greater than. That electric shockwave roaring through Puerto Rico was not concocted by a television network's marketing team. This was zero part of an orchestrated Indiana Fever promotional stunt. It was purely a raw, organic reaction from a global audience witnessing a generational talent command the hardwood. The women's game has not possessed a gladiator capable of shifting the worldwide paradigm this drastically in an eternity. And miraculously, this grueling competition had not even survived its opening 48 hours. Yet, even as the legions of supporters flooded in for Clark, while the lenses remained fixated on her every breath, and while the rival manager's kin praised her name, the authority figures dictating her playing time harbored a drastically sinister ulterior motive. You witness the torrential downpour of media spotlight blinding Caitlyn Clark right now. Did you happen to catch the headlines? The entire planet is obsessed with Caitlyn Clark. That is simply unacceptable to them. Fast break execution. Caitlyn Clark dishing out dimes that have literally never been witnessed in the history of the sport. They refuse to allow it. Pump the brakes, Cheryl. Change the strategy. We absolutely must ensure the rest of the roster gets the spotlight. Exactly. We simply do not desire her dominance. The surrounding cast requires the limelight. This evening is destined to be a showcase for Paige and Angel. Spot on. Man, what an absolutely agonizing exhibition to witness, ladies and gentlemen. Pure torture on the court. It births a very unique, visceral rage when you observe a player stare dead into the eyes of a completely unguarded comrade and purposely withhold the rock. Caitlyn Clark suffered this exact fate no less than 4 separate occasions against Puerto Rico. And shockingly, every solitary one of those frozen-out sequences centered entirely around Angel Reese. Angel Reese forcefully operating as the primary ball handler. The gaze never shifts toward Caitlyn Clark. On a single, glaring occasion, the rock is intentionally withheld from her grasp. Meanwhile, the superstar guard executed her off-ball duties flawlessly, constantly shifting her feet, carving out perfect passing lanes, deciphering the defensive scheme, and anchoring herself in prime territory for an effortless score. There she stood, totally undefended, yet her teammate locked eyes with her only to pivot in the exact opposite direction. This happened not just once, nor a couple of instances, but a minimum of 4 separate moments. The refusal to share the rock was undeniable. Witness this sequence unfold. 2 athletes leap for the board, yet the forward suddenly decides she owns the floor general role. She pushes the tempo herself, entirely squandering the offensive opportunity. The saga continues to escalate. We see the post player adopting the playmaker position. During those initial few occurrences, you might wonder about the intent. All right, Perhaps you grant the forward a pass. You could assume she lacked peripheral vision on that play, or that their rhythm simply clashed for a fleeting second. The hardwood moves at breakneck speeds, and missing a visual cue happens. However, once the sequence repeats for a third and fourth iteration, those excuses vanish into thin air. The sharpshooter remained entirely unguarded. The forward controlled the leather. Yet, she actively selected an alternate target or stubbornly jammed her own drive into heavily congested traffic when a much easier option existed. Such actions represent calculated choices, entirely separate from mere blunders. Coaches must absolutely cease pairing these two on the hardwood simultaneously. Just observe the tape. She charges aggressively down the hardwood, only to launch a baffling pass entirely in reverse. Following that, the perimeter phenom executes a spectacular maneuver, penetrates the paint, and flings a dazzling no-look pass backward, which her teammate promptly fumbles beyond the boundary lines. The guard delivers an absolute masterpiece. Breaking down the tape sequence by sequence reveals yet another brilliant assist. It becomes incredibly clear that this particular athlete knows exactly how to distribute the rock. The glaring issue, however, remains a severe lack of mutual reciprocity. Observe closely. Then, the undeniable physical altercation materialized out of nowhere. A deliberate collision occurred against the guard in a situation entirely devoid of any basketball logic for such contact. It certainly avoided reaching the level of a flagrant strike. This action lacked any competitive drive toward the leather whatsoever. It stood solely as a petty shove, occurring in an incredibly bizarre location on the floor. Digital platforms exploded with footage of this exact encounter mere hours after the game concluded, primarily because viewers immediately recognized the intentionality behind it. The gesture felt incredibly targeted and deeply fueled by individual animosity. Watch this unfold right here. Just check out the body language. Her eyes absolutely refuse to drift anywhere near the open shooter. This reality is truly stranger than fiction. After experiencing this freeze-out 10 consecutive times, she tosses the rock toward Jackie Young. However, Young immediately spots the open playmaker, resulting in a phenomenal three-point splash. The internet community absolutely refused to remain silent regarding this escalating drama. Spectators aggressively edited these freeze-out sequences into consecutive highlight reels, displaying the snubs right next to each other. The public response dragged the instigator mercilessly across every platform. Audiences who spent the entire campaign analyzing the undeniable friction bridging these two stars suddenly felt as though their deepest theories had been validated beneath the brightest international stadium lights, wearing the national colors before a worldwide demographic. Such optics are disastrous for team chemistry. Yet, the saga deepens. Those specific isolation moments simply served as the glaring symptoms of a much more deeply rooted illness. The entire offensive rhythm felt strangely suffocated whenever the sharpshooter stepped onto the hardwood, creating a jarring contrast for anyone who witnessed the clinic against Senegal just 24 hours prior. Whenever she commanded the rock in that previous matchup, the entire squad operated like a perfectly oiled machine. Believe it or not, the floor was alive with motion. Opposing guards panicked under the pressure, leaving massive windows available for clean jumpers. Facing off against Puerto Rico presented a drastically different narrative, featuring massive gaps in time where she simply ghosted along the perimeter without touching the leather. Her physical presence meant nothing because the rock actively avoided her entirely. Analyze this exact frame. While the squad desperately attempts to push the tempo, the supposed floor general decides to casually stroll up the hardwood with zero urgency. Following that sequence, the point guard successfully feeds the post, yet the connection entirely massacres their transitional speed. In stark contrast, observe the blistering pace at which the perimeter star advances the leather. Generating any semblance of a scoring run proves literally impossible over a 4-minute stretch when your forward insists on acting as the primary floor general. Proper utilization of this superstar forces every single defender into a state of sheer panic. Opposing schemes cannot simply pack the paint or double-team others, given the lethal gravity she commands from deep beyond the perimeter arc, should her own squad actively freeze her out. However, that overwhelming offensive threat instantly evaporates into thin air. Rival squads suddenly catch their breath, entirely unbothered by the perimeter ghost. Consequently, shutting down the entire scoring scheme becomes a remarkably simple task. This concept transcends mere speculation, It serves as the foundational law of court geometry. Furthermore, the underlying circumstances surrounding this drama elevate the toxicity to an entirely new level. We are discussing an athlete who, a mere evening prior under that exact same stadium roof during the identical tournament, absolutely shattered 5 International Federation milestones. The entire roster shared the bench that evening. They witnessed the masterclass firsthand. Every single woman present fully comprehended the sheer devastation unleashed when she orchestrated the offensive flow. Yet somehow, upon the very next tip-off, she endures this blatant disrespect between the lines. The cycle repeats itself immediately. That gaze aggressively refuses to acknowledge the sharpshooter's existence. That freeze-out persists until the final buzzer ultimately sounds. Just study the tape. The guard stands wide open, arms raised high, desperately begging for a pass. Relinquishing the rock to her rival simply will never happen under this dynamic. Conversely, the supposedly frozen-out guard had absolutely zero issue distributing the leather back into the post. Unfortunately, this fractured chemistry appears cemented in stone moving forward. That initial matchup featuring Kelsey Plum and Ryan Howard felt infinitely smoother, because allowing a power forward to run the offense while actively boycotting your generational shooter completely destroys any hope of executing the blistering, high-octane transition system they so desperately desire on the court. A solitary trip down the hardwood can easily be rationalized away. A secondary occurrence forces observers to stretch their imaginations a bit. However, witnessing 4 distinct snubs combined with a physical altercation undeniably establishes a toxic pattern. Spectators who consumed both matchups consecutively instantly pinpointed the catastrophic shift in team chemistry. The Rock actively avoided the hands of their most lethal weapon, and the entire scoring apparatus suffered devastating consequences right on the spot. Yet the real explosion didn't happen on the hardwood. The true blockbuster moment hit the second Kara Lawson grabbed the microphone at that post-game presser. Usually, head coaches tiptoe around these media scrums. They stick to bland, team-first cliches, terrified of handing journalists a loaded gun. That is exactly why Lawson's words after crushing Puerto Rico dropped like an absolute bombshell. It struck a completely different nerve. There was zero filter here. We suddenly got a crystal clear, unfiltered view into the reality of how she truly views Caitlyn Clark. Quote, "The beautiful, connected basketball we witnessed the day before, the sheer electricity, it completely vanished this afternoon. Honestly, watching the court felt like an absolute cure for insomnia. You had teammates literally pretending Caitlyn Clark was invisible. You had Angel Reese blazing right past her, just to cough up the basketball. An absolute circus. A total disaster class out there on the floor." Quote, Lawson kept throwing around this corporate buzzword, calling her lineup choices a fact-finding mission. And hey, at first glance, you buy it. Tinkering with the rotation, testing combinations, laying down a foundation that all tracks. It makes total sense, until she crossed a massive line. She outright declared her desire for the entire roster to grab the glory, heavily implying it shouldn't just be the Caitlyn Clark show. And the absolute kicker? She dropped this little nugget barely 24 hours after Clark shattered 5 international world records in just 19 minutes as a reserve. This was no philosophical speech about sharing the wealth. This was a calculated, intentional move to yank the microphone away from a generational talent who had just rewritten history. Did it come across like she was dodging bullets regarding her starting 5? Because her final defense was some garbage about everyone adapting to new roles and acting like alpha dogs. Nobody is buying that empty rhetoric. Quote, but the rabbit hole goes much deeper. A journalist cornered her point blank about Clark's impact against Puerto Rico, and Lawson pulled off a masterful evasion. She completely sidestepped the inquiry and changed the subject. When your superstar obliterates the record books a day prior, biting your tongue instead of praising her is no accident. It is a deeply calculated weapon. And the silence was deafening. Just look at the starters Lawson marched out onto the hardwood against the Puerto Ricans. Chelsea Gray, Paige Buchers, Kelsey Plum, Monique Billings, and Kiki Iriafen. Zero trace of Clark. And instantly, the American offense paid the price with a devastatingly slow tempo. The Rocks stuck like glue. The first string found themselves trapped in a brutal dogfight against a highly physical defense, completely unable to manufacture easy buckets. Then, our rookie phenomenon subbed in with the reserves, and the energy flipped like a light switch. Lightning-fast breaks, razor-sharp decision-making, and seamless passing. You could see the night and day transformation unfold live. Quote, "Coach, you touched upon the highs and lows of the matchup. Were those glaring flaws forced by the opponent's strategy, or was it entirely friendly fire? And if we are shooting ourselves in the foot, how exactly do you steer the ship to stop bleeding out on the floor?" Quote, "Honestly, whenever systems collapse out there, it is almost always a toxic blend of the two elements. Our defensive assignments were incredibly sloppy, way looser than intended, and the opposition made us bleed for it. The logic is simple: tighten the screws. And ideally, they stop carving us up like a Thanksgiving turkey." Quote, "But prepare yourselves, because the next detail defies all logic." The Puerto Rican squad deployed a mutant box-and-one zone, custom-built for one solitary purpose: locking Caitlyn in a cage and denying her the rock. An underdog squad destined to get blown out by 30 points literally tore up their playbook, betting their entire survival on suffocating a single athlete. The enemy feared her infinitely more than her own leader believed in her. Let that terrifying reality sink into your bones. Now, let us dissect the wreckage. This whole utopian, everybody gets a trophy mindset? Sure, demanding a collective effort is perfectly acceptable. That is just basketball 101. However, when your phenom obliterates 5 global milestones in less than 20 minutes, and your knee-jerk reaction is to sabotage her momentum the very next night, that is no coaching philosophy. That is a UT personal vendetta aimed squarely at one individual. The aspect I truly adore is the unselfish ball movement. Watching these women sacrifice for the badge and genuinely celebrate their sisters' triumphs is beautiful. Our rotation is massive right now. Consequently, these superstars are seeing their floor time slashed drastically compared to their usual runs. It is a massive psychological adjustment. Let us be real. Every single warrior on this bench is a day one starter back home, dominating for their own professional franchises, serving as the absolute apex predator or the ultimate secondary weapon for their squads. So, demanding they swallow their pride and morph into role players, especially on the scoring end, is a huge ask. Yet they are embracing the grind flawlessly. Quote, "Look, the head coach did not march up to the mic and formally declare a war on her rookie star. She never had to. Demanding the spotlight be violently ripped from the rookie, while completely ghosting inquiries about her generational performance, spoke volumes. She anchored her prodigy to the pine, mere hours less than 24. To be exact, after that same kid single-handedly butchered the previous opponent. That media scrum wasn't a shocking revelation of some grand conspiracy. It was simply the verbal stamp of approval on a crime the stat sheet had already exposed. And here lies the ultimate truth about the entire Puerto Rican debacle. It ruthlessly validates the exact nightmare scenario every loyal Indiana fanatic has been screaming about since day one. Cuff the superstar, and the entire scoring machine suffocates. Unchain her, though. And the squad doesn't just improve or find a tiny edge, they elevate to a legendary, earth-shattering tier of dominance. We are talking era-defining brilliance here. The kind of raw magic that casually shatters 5 global benchmarks in a single evening. Fast forward to Indianapolis in 2026, and trust me, absolutely zero masterminds are plotting to extinguish that inferno. Utterly unstoppable. You can visibly see the irritation boiling inside her right there, just as the American squad charges down the hardwood, craving absolute destruction. The sniper launches a massive bomb from miles beyond the perimeter. That right there is the signature, free-flowing artillery strike we crave, pure instinct, zero hesitation. She surveys the floor and strikes flawlessly. Because, honestly, that is the ultimate revelation here. The commander desperately wanted to share the spotlight among the entire roster. You had her peer blatantly ignoring her for 4 consecutive trips down the court, while the Caribbean defense threw a relentless box-and-one formation just to survive her wrath. Yet, despite every obstacle, the prodigy elevated the entire American roster for every solitary second her sneakers touched that wood. Now, just imagine the sheer devastation she will unleash without those chains holding her back. Envision the carnage when her commander actually demands she run the show and her squad desperately hunts her down on the perimeter. Welcome to the terrifying reality of the Indiana Fever in 2026. She isn't stepping into some chaotic clubhouse battling older players for glory or touches. She literally is the heartbeat of the franchise. Every single attacking scheme revolves around her lethal toolkit. Igniting the fast break, hitting guys, slashing to the hoop, dragging guards way beyond the three-point line, and carving up defenses with lasers that mere mortals could never visualize. The brass in the Midwest holds zero interest in capping her court time just to stroke another athlete's ego. They are completely obsessed with forging an unstoppable dynasty on her shoulders. Listen, if you bleed Indiana colors, that messy showdown against the island nation should not spark a single ounce of panic in your veins. Honestly, it ought to pump you up for the future, serving as a masterclass in how horribly wrong things go when she is misused. Now, the contrast makes the perfect formula blindingly obvious. That magnificent African showdown was pure perfection. 5 shattered milestones, 12 flawless dimes, 0 coughed-up rocks, and a humming machine, all achieved in less than 20 minutes of action. That is the absolute floor for her potential. That is the staggering reality when they finally let the maestro cook. Ironically, the very individuals who fought tooth and nail to suppress her during that group stage ended up proving exactly why the crossroads of America is her perfect sanctuary. From those baffling benching choices to the selfish isolation plays, every frustrating moment merely amplified how brilliantly tailored her professional environment truly is. She never has to wage war just to touch the rock. There is no petty rivalry with selfish peers desperate to force their own horrible shots. She is free to create art. Are you bracing yourself for the 2026 campaign? Because the biggest lesson from this international bloodbath was simple. A fully unleashed phenom at maximum velocity is an absolute nightmare that no defensive scheme on the planet can possibly survive. Sound off in the discussion section below and tell me your wildest theories on why the head coach deliberately chained up our generational talent. Smash that thumbs up, join the channel family, and ring that bell to catch every single drop. Tap the thumbnail glowing on your display right now, and our crew will catch you on the flip side for the next epic breakdown.